Welcome to The Practical Animal. The channel is for you if having a successful career means working with animals. That could be with wild animals or domestics. If you want to work with wildlife, that could be in the wild or in captivity. If you want to work with domestics, that could be with companion animals such as dogs or cats, or farm animals. Whatever you want to work with, we show you what it takes. The aim of my educational videos is to give you careers advice, highlight the skills needed, and suggest a career plan. I do this by each week interviewing wildlife conservationists or animal industrialists, discussing their success. In so doing, we reveal how to beat the competition for your dream job. If you're new here, welcome to our incredible little corner on the internet. Take a second, introduce yourself in the comments section below, together with a comment on what course you are on, or what animals you work with, or if you are a volunteer at a zoo or other biodiversity venue. If you are back again, always good to have you here. Say hello, always good to see you in the comments. You can subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If you liked this video and got something from it, if I can get you to hit the like button, that would be amazing. The algorithm likes that. It gets these talks, these free tools and information out to more people, and it's good for the earth. Either way, my name is John Beaumont, and I am a qualified field biologist, conservation biologist, and veterinary surgeon. My next guest is Gavin Shire, who is a wildlife conservation science communicator in the USA. Originally from Britain, he worked on the world's rarest bird, then moved to America to pursue a conservation career. He is here today to pass on advice to aspiring conservationists. I began by asking him how his career developed.
I think it was Arlo Guthrie who said, most of the good things in my life came out of not doing what I didn't want to do. And that's kind of been the story of my career. I wasn't one of these people who at school knew what they wanted to do with their lives. I knew what I didn't want to do with my life. I didn't want to be a doctor. I didn't want to be a lawyer. I didn't want to be an engineer. So what did that leave? Well, that left biology. So I kind of went on that track because I was kind of good at it and it fit. I didn't know what I wanted to do with that biology. I came out really from university with no desire to do anything at all. And just by chance, I knew somebody who was working in Mauritius as a field biologist who invited me to come out and join them. She knew that I was interested in birds of prey and I'd done some traveling in Africa. So I thought, why not? And realized that it really motivated me. I love it. It gives me a great deal of satisfaction. So
after Mauritius, what happened?
I realized that I wanted to continue with conservation, but I wanted to do it in a place where there were more opportunities and I could really build a career. And having met some American biologists and conservationists in Mauritius, I kind of realized that America was a good place, a good fit for me. And my wife is American, and so it was sort of kind of really an obvious move for me to come to the States and try and forge a career in conservation in America. And I was right, there are a lot of opportunities in America. They have a very strong non-profit organization structure here and lots of opportunities. And that was where I started off in the non-profit world as a field biologist, and later on moving to a desk to be in communications. It was something that I realized that I had an aptitude for, and there was a need for, to communicate the need for conservation an ability to communicate the benefits of conservation and what conservation organizations do on a daily basis. That sort of link between being the scientist and being, the layperson, being able to translate science and conservation into common language that people can relate to. So I joined a small but growing nonprofit called American Bird Conservancy and started off doing communications for them, and spent the next 12 years doing that, making my way up the ranks and, growing with that organization, to the point where I felt I'd got all I could out of them and given them all I could. And at that point, joined the federal government, which is another great thing about the States, is they have a very significant conservation presence in the federal government. I joined the Fish and Wildlife Service, which was a terrific move for me. It opened up a lot of doors, and spent 8 years with them before moving to the US Geological Survey, where I now communicate more than just biology and conservation, all science.
The Mauritius Project is legendary. Can you describe what it was about, please?
In many ways, a pretty standard conservation project, built mainly out of volunteers and fairly low-paid field workers, which is what I was. It's been repeated in every single country hundreds of times, working to save various species. But it's legendary because of its success, which is highly unusual, particularly where the Mauritius kestrel is concerned, and that was the project I was working on. One time, the rarest bird in the world. At the point I was there, it was still, I think, the rarest raptor in the world, or one of them. But it was a combination of perseverance, hard work, in some ways luck. That the reason for the decline of the kestrel was a very specific reason, and that was the use of DDT that had been stopped, which gave the kestrel the opportunity to recover because the main threat was no longer there. But extremely savvy leadership. The guy in charge of the project, Carl Jones, understood that it wasn't just about biology. It was about relationship building with the locals, with the government, and the government was incredibly supportive. We had a very close relationship with the government minister, who I met, on a regular basis, and who was quite involved in the project. We had some terrific scientists who were working on that project. The combination was the reason for the success, and serves as a model for anybody looking to do that kind of conservation work in developing countries, where the infrastructure isn't, what it might be in Britain or America.
What made you decide to pursue a career in wildlife conservation, wildlife science, not in the UK, but abroad, and particularly the US?
That I didn't just want to earn a paycheck. I wanted to do something that was value driven for me. I think the reason for a career in conservation outside of England was really the opportunity. To me, the opportunities in Britain were relatively few and far between for somebody who didn't have a PhD or a master's. I came straight out of university with a bachelor's degree. I'm not academically oriented, and I didn't have much of a desire to go back and get a master's or a PhD. And the United States has the infrastructure and the scope and the scale in their conservation that really enabled me to carve out a pretty successful career for myself here.
To work as a wildlife conservationist, do you need a degree?
I think increasingly you do. Even just having a bachelor's degree at this point, the competition is so stiff. I would advise folks to knuckle down, and even if, like me, you're not particularly academically oriented, to pursue that advanced degree.
Gavin, how easy or difficult is it for example, a Brit who wants to work as a wildlife conservationist to do what you did, move out of the UK, get some experience in tropical projects like Mauritius, but then move to the US and stay in his chosen career, wildlife conservation?
I think you've got to be pretty determined. I was lucky that my wife is American, I had a base and was really able to work through the system. The hardest part of it is navigating the immigration side of things, just, getting the work permit, I was lucky I had an employer who was willing to work through the green card process with me. And, it's not easy. There are a lot of opportunities here. And if you're dogged and determined, which I was, to work through that process and use the contacts that you've got and persevere, it's well worth the effort.
What 3 books or people or meetings have most influenced your thinking as a wildlife conservationist?
I read Silent Spring when I was probably 16 or 17, and that kind of opened my eyes up to the sort of notion of our impact on the planet. It did lead me to a real interest in ecology and how the human footprint has affected the entire planet. There's not an inch of space on the planet that isn't impacted in some way. And just sort of the idea that, pesticide use in England could impact birds in Antarctica. So I think that was sort of fairly seminal. My chance encounter with somebody who became a friend, who later on invited me out to Mauritius, was another seminal point in my life. I hadn't sort of looked at conservation as a career. It was definitely pivotal in sort of changing the direction of my life.
How would you describe wildlife conservation and wildlife science communication in the US as a career today?
Well, wildlife science communication, I think, is as critical as the science itself. We can do all the science we want. We can have all of the ideas on how to improve the status of different species or habitats, but we can't do it in a vacuum. We need the support of governments, of societies, of individuals. And the only way we can do that is to get people to understand the value of it. And that's a communications job. And so my career has largely been working on that angle. And it's what I do today, whether it is communicating to members of Congress on the value of different federal programs, or communicating to individuals on the importance of not buying elephant ivory, for example, getting them to change behaviors. I think that is just as valuable as the science. Fortunately, in America, there is the infrastructure, the conservation infrastructure that places a high value on communications. So all of the NGOs have, fairly big communications departments. The federal government places a lot of stock in communicating what it does, partly because it has a duty of transparency. Being a federal government agency, it's got to tell the public about how it's spending the public's tax dollars, but also because there is that understanding of we have to demonstrate value. if we're going to get the continued support from the people that is going to continue to fund us and enable us to do what we're doing. I think America is, for somebody looking to do conservation communications or science communications, is one of the best places that you can be.
How do you see the job of being in wildlife conservation, science communication changing over the next 10 years?
It's a changing field because of social media. It's Instagram. People's attention spans have decreased tremendously. So what you said in 2 pages before, you had to learn to say in 1 page, and now it's, a paragraph if you're lucky, to get your point across. And because of that, some of the nuance gets lost, and that's always a problem with communicating science, because so much of it is nuanced. It isn't simple. Science is a complicated process. Conservation is a complicated process. And when you try to simplify it, you can end up losing meaning or even saying the wrong thing. And so one of the struggles that we have in communications is how to get people to listen for more than 240 characters. I think that's going to continue to change. Using visual imagery is, I think, becoming more and more important. Multimedia, the use of video, the use of story maps, infographics, ways of getting our point across very succinctly. Pictures that tells 1,000 words, as the cliche goes, but never has that been truer or more important. Again, a single image only tells part of the story. So how do we get across the more complex issues? That's going to be a continual challenge as people's time gets shorter, people's attention spans get shorter.
Gavin, what skills, experiences, or personal qualities have been key to your success in a career in wildlife conservation, science communication?
Having good written and oral communication skills on an interpersonal basis is critical. I mean, there's sort of the broader communication skills of writing a press release, but interpersonal communication skills that have enabled me to bridge the gap between science and scientists and the communications field, and build relationships, I think, has been critical. Having that science background and being able to speak that language has been important. Sheer bloody mindedness and dogged determination. You have to be willing to risk failure. I think, just be willing to stick your neck out a little bit for the sake of your career, and stick with it.
What advice can you offer somebody wanting to pursue a career in wildlife conservation, science communication?
I think if you're in school still, pay equal attention to the science side of things and the English side, having an understanding of social science and what motivates people. And that means understanding your audience.
Gavin, you're a specialist in wildlife conservation, science communications. It's been absolutely fascinating talking to you. Thank you for being on the Practical Animal channel. Gavin Shire.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.